When a beloved TV presenter says he'd tell the President of the United States to shut up, we've entered a truly chaotic timeline. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where today we're diving into Eamonn Holmes' absolutely no-filter take on how to deal with Donald Trump, delivered with the kind of blunt, northern directness that makes diplomats weep into their carefully worded statements. Trump's at Davos rubbing shoulders with world leaders while simultaneously insulting them, Keir Starmer's notably absent from the gathering, Emmanuel Macron's talking about preferring respect to bullies, and Eamonn's on GB News saying someone just needs to tell Trump to shut his mouth. It's diplomatic chaos meets breakfast television punditry, and honestly, it's exactly the content we need right now. Let's unpack this beautiful mess. So the setup here is that Donald Trump's scheduled to speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos, that annual gathering of global elites where billionaires and politicians pretend to care about inequality while drinking champagne in Swiss ski resorts. Trump's meeting world leaders and delivering a speech, and everyone's watching nervously because his recent behavior suggests he's either completely unhinged or playing four-dimensional chess, and honestly, nobody's quite sure which. He's called the UK's Chagos deal an act of great stupidity, doubled down on wanting to annex Greenland like it's a property on a monopoly board, and generally conducted himself like someone who thinks international relations is a reality TV show where the loudest person wins. On Tuesday evening, Trump had a proper go at both Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, accusing them of being nice to his face but rough behind his back. He said they treat him well when he's around, but get a bit rough when he's not, which is the diplomatic equivalent of complaining that people talk about you when you leave the room. It's simultaneously petty and revealing, because Trump clearly expects world leaders to maintain the same level of deference in private that they show in public meetings, and he's genuinely upset when they don't. The man's the President of the United States, and he's acting like a teenager complaining that his friends gossip about him. This is where Eamonn Holmes enters the story, and bless him, he's got absolutely zero patience for diplomatic niceties. On GB News, Eamonn laid out exactly how he'd deal with Trump, and it's refreshingly direct. He said he'd be confrontational, very direct, take no nonsense. He wouldn't care who Trump is or how he's doing things. He thinks Trump gets away with practically murder and needs somebody to just tell him to shut up. That's not diplomatic language, that's pub conversation. That's the kind of straight talk that makes career diplomats break out in hives, but probably resonates with huge numbers of viewers who are sick of politicians tiptoeing around Trump. The phrase "gets away with practically murder" is particularly pointed because Trump literally did get away with things that would end anyone else's career. Multiple investigations, impeachments, scandals, the January 6th Capitol riot, classified documents, the Access Hollywood tape, countless other controversies, and he's president again with apparently more power and less restraint than his first term. From the perspective of someone like Eamonn, who's watched this unfold over years, the frustration that nobody ever holds Trump accountable is entirely understandable. The suggestion that someone should tell Trump to shut his mouth is beautifully blunt. You can imagine the horror in Whitehall if a British politician actually said that. The careful diplomats would be scrambling to issue clarifications and apologies, talking about the special relationship and shared values. But Eamonn's not a diplomat. He's a broadcaster who's built a career on being direct and relatable. And what he's expressing is what millions of people are thinking. Someone should tell this man to shut his mouth and stop insulting allies, threatening sovereign nations, and generally behaving like international relations is his personal playground. James Rampton, the journalist joining Eamonn, made a fascinating point about Trump only respecting strong men. He noted it's always men, adding that Trump's deeply misogynistic, but has grudging respect for people who are as aggressive, macho, and idiotically unable to listen to other opinions as he is. That's a brutal but accurate assessment of Trump's psychology. He responds to dominance displays, to people who match his aggression, to strong man posturing. He has no time for diplomacy, nuance, or people he perceives as weak. Rampton's suggestion is that if you go to Trump and say firmly that he cannot tell a sovereign nation how to run its country, he might actually take notice. Otherwise, he thinks everyone's rolling over because of American economic might, saying yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir. That's the core problem with how Western leaders have approached Trump. They've been too deferential, too worried about offending him and damaging the relationship, too willing to absorb his insults quietly. And Trump interprets that restraint as weakness, which only encourages more bad behavior. The comment about Trump having astounding cheek to tell the UK how to run its country is spot on. Imagine if Keir Starmer started publicly criticizing American domestic policy, telling Trump how to run his immigration system or his health care. The outrage would be instant and massive. But Trump feels perfectly comfortable commenting on the Chagos deal, on London's problems, on how European leaders should govern. He has no sense of diplomatic boundaries or appropriate behavior for a head of state. Rampton said Trump's been pandered to his whole life and now we're reaping the whirlwinds. That's genuinely insightful because Trump's entire existence has been one of never facing real consequences. He was born wealthy, bailed out of business failures by his father's money and connections, became famous for playing a successful businessman on TV while his actual businesses struggled, and somehow parlayed all that into the presidency. People have been telling him he's brilliant and special and can do no wrong for 70+ years. Why would he change now? The observation that it's a big no-no to tell other world leaders how to govern is diplomatic 101, but Trump's never cared about those rules. He's criticized allies, praised dictators, withdrawn from agreements, imposed tariffs, insulted entire countries, and generally behaved like international norms don't apply to him. And frustratingly, he's faced minimal consequences. America's economic and military power means he can get away with behavior that would isolate any other country. The fact that Keir Starmer is notably absent from Davos is interesting and probably wise. What's the point of showing up when Trump's going to be there insulting you? Better to stay home, avoid giving him photo opportunities, and not put yourself in a position where you have to either confront him publicly, which could escalate tensions, or smile and shake his hand, which looks weak after he's been slagging you off. Starmer's absence is its own kind of statement, a refusal to play Trump's game. Trump's comments about London having problems while summarizing his relationship with Starmer are classic Trump. Deflection. He can't just have a normal relationship with another leader, he has to criticize their governance, suggest they're failing, position himself superior. Saying London's got problems is vague enough to mean anything, but pointed enough to be insulting. It lets Trump imply that Starmer is a bad leader without having to provide specifics or evidence. The suggestion that Starmer and Macron need to straighten out their countries is rich coming from a president whose own country is deeply polarized, struggling with inequality, facing democratic backsliding, and just had its capital stormed by supporters of the previous administration, which was also Trump. America's got plenty of problems Trump should focus on before lecturing other nations about theirs. Emmanuel Macron's response was absolutely perfect. Saying we prefer respect to bullies and rule of law to brutality is diplomatic language for you're a bully and we're not impressed. Macron's walking a difficult line because France needs to maintain its relationship with America, but he also can't be seen domestically as rolling over for Trump. French voters expect their president to stand up to American pressure, to defend French sovereignty and European interests. Macron's response threads that needle quite well. His warning about emerging imperial ambitions between global superpowers is genuinely important. Trump's talk of annexing Greenland, his threats about taking the Panama Canal, his pressure on allies, all of this signals a more aggressive, transactional approach to international relations. America's abandoning the liberal international order it helped create after World War II in favor of naked pursuit of national interest, regardless of alliances or norms. That's dangerous because it encourages other powers, China and Russia particularly, to do the same. The whole Davos scene is fascinating as political theater. You've got world leaders gathering to discuss global cooperation and shared challenges, and meanwhile, Trump's there insulting them, demanding they change their policies, threatening sovereign nations, and generally behaving like a mob boss collecting protection money. The contrast between the official rhetoric about cooperation and the reality of Trump's behavior couldn't be starker.
Eamonn's approach, being confrontational and direct and telling Trump to shut up, wouldn't work diplomatically, but it would be incredibly satisfying to watch. There's a massive audience for someone standing up to Trump without the usual political calculation and diplomatic hedging. Just straightforward, "You're ridiculous, stop it," delivered with conviction. It wouldn't change Trump's behavior, nothing will, but it would at least demonstrate that not everyone's intimidated. The question of how European leaders deal with Trump at Davos is genuinely interesting. Do they confront him about his recent comments? Do they try to charm him and build personal relationships, knowing he responds to flattery? Or do they avoid him entirely and focus on building coalitions with each other? There's no good answer because Trump's unpredictable and transactional, and what works today might fail tomorrow depending on what he's seen on Fox News that morning. The broader issue here is that the international system isn't built for someone like Trump. It's built on assumptions of shared interests, diplomatic norms, respect for sovereignty, predictable behavior. Trump rejects all of that. He sees international